Hi, I'm Lauren Mitchell, and for years I thought keeping quiet kept peace in my family. I learned to swallow my words, to shrink myself down to fit into the small space they allotted for me. But the night of my brother's engagement, I discovered they had given away something that wasn't theirs to give. My apartment. That betrayal didn't just break me, it changed everything. Before we dive into this, please like this video, subscribe to my channel, and tell me in the comments where are you watching from. The party was a sea of pastel silks and expensive champagne. Laughter, light and brittle, echoed off the high ceilings of the rented hall. I felt like an outsider from the moment I arrived, a simple rowboat in a harbor full of yachts. My family moved through the crowd with an ease I could never imitate. My father clapped men on the back, his laugh booming. My mother, elegant and poised, accepted compliments about the event, about her son, about everything but me. I stood near a pillar, nursing a glass of sparkling water, watching them, watching my brother, Mark, and his fiancée, Sarah, glow in. The center of it all, an aunt I hadn't seen in years drifted over to me, her perfume arriving a full second before she did. "Lauren, dear, always on the sidelines, aren't you?" she said, patting my arm. "You should be more like your brother. He knows how to own a room." I just smiled, a tight, practiced motion that didn't reach my eyes. It was the story of my life. Lauren, the quiet one. Lauren, the responsible one. Mark, the star. After what felt like an eternity of small talk, my father tapped a spoon against his champagne flute. The room quieted, all faces turning toward the small stage where he stood, beaming, with Mark and Sarah on either side. "Friends, family," he began, his voice thick with pride. "Thank you all for coming to celebrate this wonderful occasion. My son, Mark, has always made us proud." I felt a familiar clenching in my gut. He launched into a speech, a highlight reel of Mark's life, conveniently edited to remove the failures. He mentioned Mark's business acumen, glossing over the startup that I knew our parents had bailed out twice. He praised his generosity, conveniently forgetting the times Mark had borrowed money from me with no intention of paying it back. I listened, my jaw tight, feeling myself disappear. It was as if my own accomplishments, my own struggles, were written in invisible ink. Then, he raised his glass higher, his smile widening. He looked out into the crowd, his eyes sweeping past me without a flicker of recognition. "And to show our love and support as they begin their journey together," he declared, his voice booming across the room, "we have a special gift for them. We've given Mark and his fiancée Lauren's apartment to start their new life together." The words hit me like a physical blow. The air rushed out of my lungs. For a moment, the entire world went silent, the sounds of the party fading into a distant buzz. A hush fell over the room, a collective intake of breath. Then, a wave of gasps. I nearly dropped my glass, my hand frozen in midair. My sparkling water trembled, the tiny bubbles fizzing over the rim and onto my fingers. Cold as ice. Every eye in the room turned to me. Every single one. It was a slow, agonizing pivot, 100 pairs of eyes finding me by the pillar. The whispers started immediately, rippling through the elegant hall like a contagion. "She didn't know," I heard a cousin murmur to her husband. "Look at her face. They didn't even tell her." I looked toward the stage. My mother, seated in the front row, just smiled, a serene, placid expression on her face as if this was the most natural thing in the world. She caught my eye and gave a tiny, almost imperceptible nod as if to say, "Play along, don't make a scene." My brother, Mark, was beaming, his arm wrapped possessively around Sarah's waist. He was already accepting the applause, already thanking our parents, basking in a moment that was built on my foundation. No one noticed my trembling hands. No one saw how my entire world, the world I had painstakingly built for myself, collapsed. In that single horrifying moment, it was all a blur of sparkling lights, fake smiles, and the most profound humiliation I had ever felt. Years of sacrifice flashed before my eyes, not as a vague concept, but as a series of sharp, painful memories. I saw myself at 23, working as a junior accountant during the day, then changing in a gas station bathroom to put on the black apron for my waitressing job at night. I remembered the bone-deep exhaustion, the smell of grease that clung to my hair, the ache in my feet that never seemed to go away. I saw myself eating ramen noodles over the sink in my tiny rental, staring at my bank statement, watching the number for my down payment fund tick up with agonizing slowness. I remembered skipping lunches, telling concerned coworkers I'd already eaten, just to save another $10, all for my apartment. My parents had always made little of my efforts. I remembered the day I signed the mortgage papers. I called them, my voice shaking with excitement and pride. "It's a lot of responsibility, Lauren," was my mother's first comment. "Are you sure you can handle it alone?" My father was even more dismissive. "You'll be house poor," he'd grunted. "Should have just found a nice man to take care of you. This is what your brother should be doing, building equity." They never saw my ambition, only my perceived vulnerability. They never saw my strength, only my gender. Meanwhile, Mark's life was a parade of unearned gifts. I remembered his 21st birthday when they'd bought him a brand new sports car. I had asked them for a small loan of $500 a month earlier to fix the timing belt on my 10-year-old sedan, and was told to learn to budget better. I remembered them paying his entire college tuition, while I had worked my way through school, graduating with a mountain of student loans. For him, there was always a safety net woven from their money and their excuses. For me, there was just the expectation that I would manage on my own. "You're so responsible." "Lauren," they'd say, "you don't need our help." It was never a compliment. It was their absolution, their excuse to ignore me and pour all their resources into their son. My chair scraped against the polished floor as I pushed it back. I had to get out of there. I needed air. I needed to think. "Excuse me," I mumbled. To my aunt, who was now staring at me with a mixture of pity and morbid curiosity. I walked away, my legs feeling like they were moving through concrete. Each step was a battle. I could feel the eyes on my back, the whispers following me like a shadow. Inside the blessedly empty and silent marble-lined restroom, I leaned against the cold countertop and stared at my reflection. My face was a pale, shocked mask. My eyes were wide, my lipstick suddenly too bright. Tears welled, hot and stinging, burning the backs of my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not here, not now. I would not give them the satisfaction of my tears. My thoughts raced, a chaotic storm of anger and pain. They planned this behind my back. They sat at dinner tables with me, asked about my day, all while plotting to give away my home. The premeditation was what hurt the most. This wasn't a spontaneous, misguided gesture. This was a calculated decision. They had weighed my life, my security, my future, and decided it was worth less than their son's convenience. They had decided I didn't matter. I replayed my father's words, each one a fresh stab of pain. "We've given her apartment," not Lauren's apartment. Her apartment. As if I were a footnote in my own life. They had erased my name, my sweat, my sacrifices, all in one callous public sentence. The restroom door swung open, and the sound of the party music spilled in. It was Sarah, Mark's fiancée. She looked beautiful in her white dress, her eyes sparkling with a joy that felt like a personal insult. She saw me, and her face softened with what looked like sympathy, but I knew it was just the performative kindness of a winner. She came up to me, her arms open. I flinched, but she was already wrapping me in a hug. Her perfume was sweet and cloying. "Thank you, Lauren," she whispered into my ear, her voice sincere. "This means so much to us. It's such a wonderful, generous gift." She pulled back, still holding my arms, her eyes shining. "Mark and I were just talking about it. We're thinking of knocking down that wall between the kitchen and the living room to make it more open plan. And your little office? It would make a perfect nursery one day." That was it. The final cut. The image of them destroying the walls I had painted, turning the office where I'd built my career into a nursery for a child that wasn't mine. It was more than I could bear. My silence, my stoicism, it all shattered. This wasn't just about an apartment anymore. It was about my existence. But as the rage crested, something else rose to meet it. A cold, hard clarity. What my parents didn't realize, what no one in that room knew, was a secret I had held close for 6 long months. I had sensed their favoritism worsening, their casual disregard for my life growing more pronounced. The final straw had been an overheard phone call a year ago. I'd come home early and heard my mother in the kitchen speaking to my father. "Mark's business isn't doing well," she'd said in a low voice. "He's going to need a real asset soon. Lauren's apartment is just sitting there. She doesn't need all that space." That conversation had chilled me to the bone. The next day, I had made an appointment with an estate lawyer. I felt a strange mix of guilt and fierce self-preservation as I sat in his office. But he was kind and understanding. "It's your asset, Miss Mitchell," he'd said. "You have every right to protect it." I had transferred the property title into my own irrevocable trust. Legally, the apartment was a fortress, completely untouchable without my signature. Their grand gift was nothing but empty words, a public performance built on a lie they believed to be true. I took a deep, steadying breath. My hands still trembled, but a strange, icy calm settled over me. I looked at Sarah's happy, oblivious face. "You're welcome," I said, my voice flat. I stepped around her and walked out of the restroom, leaving her standing there, slightly confused. I walked back into the main hall, my head held high. My steps were deliberate. The party was in full swing again, the uncomfortable silence of moments before papered over with loud music and laughter. I walked directly to our family's table. My parents looked up, my mother's smile faltering when she saw the look on my face. Mark glared at me, annoyed by the interruption to his celebration. I stood by my chair, but I didn't sit down. I waited for a lull in the music. My voice when I spoke was not loud, but it was steady and sharp. It cut through the background, chatter like a knife. "Funny," I said, looking directly at my father. "I don't recall signing any gift deeds." The words hung in the air. Conversations at the nearby tables died down. People turned to stare again. This time, they weren't just curious. They were captivated. "The apartment is mine," I continued, my voice gaining strength as I looked from my father to my mother. "Legally, it's held in a trust. You can't give away what doesn't belong to you." The room fell silent once more. This time, it was a heavy, suffocating silence, the kind that presses in on you. My father's face, which had been flushed with pride, was now turning a deep, mottled red. "Lauren, this is not the time or the place," he hissed, his voice low and threatening. My mother, ever the smooth operator, tried to laugh it off. It was a brittle, ugly sound. "Oh, Lauren, don't be so dramatic. It's just a formality. We were going to talk to you about it later, of course." "Later?" I asked, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. "When? After they had moved in? After you had changed the locks? Or were you just going to let me find out when my key didn't work?" I looked at Mark. "What's your problem?" he snapped, his entitlement radiating off him. "It's just an apartment. You can get another one." His words confirmed everything. In their eyes, I was temporary. My life was disposable. I reached into my small evening bag. With deliberate, almost theatrical slowness, I pulled out the folded set of documents, the copies of the trust agreement I had started carrying with me everywhere, just in case. I unfolded them and laid them on the white tablecloth, right in the center of the table. "This is not a formality," I said, my voice now as cold and hard as the marble in the restroom. "This is a legal document. The apartment and everything in it is held in the L.M. Mitchell Trust. Sole beneficiary, me. Sole trustee, me. Your names are nowhere on it. You have no legal claim, and therefore, no legal right to give it away." Collective gasp echoed through the now completely silent room. My father stared at the papers as if they were a venomous snake. My mother's mask of calm composure finally cracked, her mouth hanging slightly open. Even Mark's fiancée, Sarah, took a physical step back from him, her smile gone, replaced by a look of dawning, horrified comprehension. She finally realized she had been celebrating a lie, an empty promise made at my expense. I pushed my chair back further, the legs scraping loudly in the stillness. It was time to leave. "You wanted to erase me," I said, my gaze sweeping over my family, the architects of my pain. You wanted to make me small, to make me disappear. Instead, you've only erased your own credibility in front of everyone you wanted to impress. The relatives who had joined in mocking me earlier, with their whispers and pitying stares, now looked away, suddenly fascinated by their dinner plates or the ceiling. They were ashamed, not for me, but for being witnesses to this ugly public unraveling. I turned and walked away. I didn't run. I didn't look back. I walked through the silent crowd, a path parting for me as if I were a queen. The feeling wasn't triumph, not yet. It was a heavy, determined feeling of release. I was walking away from a life that was suffocating me, one polite smile at a time. The drive home was a blur. The city lights smeared across my windshield. The adrenaline began to fade, and a single tear finally escaped, tracing a hot path down my cheek. It wasn't a tear of sadness or self-pity. It was a tear of pure, unadulterated relief. The immense weight of their expectations, their disappointments, their casual cruelty, was finally lifting. I parked my car in my designated spot, in the garage of my building. I took the elevator up to my floor. I slid my key into the lock of my front door. The click of the deadbolt sliding open was the most satisfying sound I had ever heard. I stepped inside and leaned against the door, breathing in the familiar scent of my home. I didn't turn on the lights right away. I just stood there in the darkness, letting the reality of it wash over me. I walked through the rooms, my fingers tracing the edge of the bookshelf I'd assembled myself, the sofa I'd saved for a year. I walked into my small office and looked out the window at the sprawling city lights. This was my view, earned with my labor. They had tried to take this from me, not with force, but with the casual assumption that they had the right. They had underestimated me. They had always underestimated me. I whispered the words into the quiet of my apartment, a vow to myself. This is mine, paid in full, with my silence, my sacrifices, and now, my strength. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt completely and utterly free. If you've ever been overlooked or betrayed by family, let this remind you, the truth has power when spoken at the right moment. Comment your thoughts below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories of betrayal turned into justice.